to Street Stories NYC.
This street story is about Maryanne. I met her pushing her cart on the streets of Queens. It was about midnight and the cold wind was biting. Snow was on the ground from the previous night's storm, and the wind whipped in as the low-pressure system moved out to sea. Maryanne was used to the cold. She had done duty in Alaska when she was in the army. She never really saw any action in her 3 years that she spent in the service. Her main duties were in the kitchen. She loved to cook. There was nothing like the smell of the kitchen and having great kitchen tools. She enjoyed cooking for all of her fellow servicemen and women. Her tour got cut short when she was found in the kitchen one day, shaking violently and saying that she heard voices. At first, everyone laughed and thought she was playing, but after a thorough examination, she was given a medical discharge. These voices kept telling her to go, get her rifle, and start shooting everyone. She now took 4 pills a day to keep those voices away. She collected bottles at night, now during the week. It gave her something to do and some extra money. Uncle Sam paid for her disability, rent-controlled apartment and food stamps. She had a studio apartment that was very quiet and no one bothered her. She went out about 11:30 at night, and by midnight she was on her usual route. Garbage pickup was Mondays and Thursdays on some blocks, and Tuesdays and Fridays on others. On the nights when there was no pickup, she would go to the supermarkets and street garbage cans to look for bottles. There were several Italian restaurants on the boulevard and some beautifully bricked houses that looked like mansions. She had heard that John Gotti had lived over this side. Years ago, some of the neighborhood kids got into big trouble for chasing a black guy to the parkway, where he got hit by a car and died. The neighborhood was tarnished as racist. Maryanne knew there were probably some mobsters that still lived over this side, but things were a little bit less obvious these days. Maryanne had a cart that she had stolen from the supermarket, and she rolled around from block to block. Tonight she decided to go behind the fancy seafood restaurant and check for bottles. She got to the dumpster and quietly lifted the top back. It was so cold that she couldn't really smell how bad the stench was in the dumpster. She wanted to give it a thorough search, so she climbed inside. Just then, the lights of a car came around to the driveway. Instinctively, Maryanne dived down. It seemed to be coming right at the dumpster. Now she really buried herself in the trash, so that only her eyes were peeking out the sides of the dumpster. She heard the car roll in and turn around, and saw the reversed lights come on, and the car backed right up to the dumpster. 2 men emerged from the car and opened the trunk. They pulled a man out of the trunk. His hands were tied behind his back. "Where is the money?" one man shouted, holding a gun to his temples. He ripped the duct tape off the man's mouth. "I don't know," the victim whimpered, tears streaming down his face. The bald-headed burly driver quietly pulled out a knife and slit his throat from ear to ear. Maryanne reeled back in horror and tried not to make a sound. Just then, the men lifted the cover of the dumpster and threw the man in. He was still gurgling as blood poured out from his neck, and his eyes met hers under the garbage as he fought for his last breath. Maryanne got a good look at the 2 men before they jumped in their car and sped off. When she was sure that they were gone, she climbed out of the dumpster and ran home, leaving behind her wagon and her bottles. The next morning, she was awakened by a knock at the door. It was the police. One of the neighborhood policemen recognized her cart by the dumpster and figured that Maryanne must have seen something. She went to the precinct, and after seeing some mugshots, she picked out the 2 men that she saw. It turned out that the government had been trying to get a case against these 2 guys for a long time. They finally had a witness. Maryanne was quickly taken away into a witness protection program until the trial. In the months that followed, the follow-up to the trial made the daily headlines on all the major networks and most of the trashier ones. The unknown witness became a celebrity. The media sensation touted the witness as an enigma in the crime case of the century. Finally, the day of the trial came. Maryanne looked really vibrant that day as she was led into the courtroom. The defense lawyer went into her military records and argued that she was crazy and she couldn't possibly be a credible witness. But on cross-examining, the prosecutor made his case that Maryanne was quite competent and she surely could recall the incident clearly. She had picked out the defendants from a lineup and from the mugshots. The jury agreed and came in with their verdict in 2 hours. As the guilty verdict was announced, the defendant jumped up from his seat and began screaming at Maryanne. "You're dead, you bitch! I can reach you even from prison!" he yelled. Everything went into slow motion at that point, and she could see everyone in the courtroom moving and making noise, but it seemed like it wasn't real. She couldn't differentiate who was who anymore, and she began to shake violently. She heard those voices again. Before anyone could blink, she had the bailiff's revolver, took off the safety, and began to open fire. Her training had kicked in. "Destroy the enemy!" She was screaming to the top of her lungs. She must have gotten off 6 shots before she was tackled to the floor. The state no longer had to worry about housing the 2 prisoners. They both had 3 bullet holes in their head and chest. Maryanne is now in a guarded mental hospital in New Jersey. She has a wonderful view, and she no longer hears any voices because of the heavy medication. She kept the clippings that one reporter wrote, calling her a hero for ridding society of 2 criminals. She loves this place because people come to visit her and talk, and they're even talking about writing a book about her. Even more than everything else, they have a big, beautiful kitchen. But even in the sobriety of a mental institution, the voices still told Maryanne to kill. Till next time, on Street Stories NYC.
City too cold, gotta keep me a heater. And watching my back, cause snakes moving deeper. Came from the bottom, was serving the people. Now it's big money, got lawyers and leases. Street Stories NYC, where the bosses be. Where the youngest turn killers for they 17. Saw a lot of dreams getting lost in the code of the street. Make a milli, but you still gotta watch where you eat. Ooh, no mercy here. Nah. North City, take your soul, leave you cold out here. Your loyalty don't come for free. So welcome to Street Stories NYC. Ooh, no mercy here. City, take your soul, leave you cold out here. Yeah, loyalty don't come for free. So welcome to Street Stories NYC.
Get the raw full 45 set collection. Available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and of course, StreetStoriesNYC.com.